Crash, thanks for joining us on Following on Ashes Inquest. Well, it wasn't close. Couldn't move for players on both sides saying that was the best test of the Ashes. Well, if that was the best test, it doesn't say a great deal for the series as a whole, but we've had a bit of negativity for the first half an hour of this show. Let's have a bit of positivity. From an Australian perspective, Mitchell Starc, fitting that he picked up the final 2 wickets today in the England innings. It's not often fast bowlers get better as they get older, but he is certainly somebody that has broken the mould in so many different ways across the course of his illustrious career.
Yeah, John, when he first started, he was in and out of the team. He was regularly dropped. But you know what? Shane Warne called him weak, and that almost became the acorn on his seat that drove him to be everything but weak. His pace, his consistency, his fitness, his passion for Test cricket. I reckon he's surrendered up to $10 million in IPL deals where he just didn't want to play in that competition for 6 or so years so he could play Test. So he's been a dream. He really has. 31 wickets in the series. It's rare. And, that's 5 wickets a Test and playing every Test. So, yeah, he's quite special.
Yeah, Crash, I mean, John's talking about positivity. It's positivity. It's 4-1, and it's a comfortable win for Australia. But there's still some huge question marks in Australia. I mean, Weatherall was poor. Labuschagne wasn't the Labuschagne we're probably expecting. Khawaja's gone and retired. Green looks so out of kilter. Don't know what to do with Webster. I mean, the list goes on. Who's going to be your fast bowlers? Because Doggett did all right. Nisa's getting on. Richardson played once. And Lyon's body let him down again. So as much as it was 4-1, there's some questions for Australia as well.
Huge questions, Harmy. And here's the thing. In the next year and a half, they're playing South Africa in South Africa, India in India, and England in England, with a team which will change by the Test. So I sense this is the glorious high point of this generation. And from here on, it just gets tougher. Now, everyone who was called into action rose to the occasion. Bo Webster did. Michael Nisa did. Scott Boland, no one expected him to play 5 Tests. He did and took 20 wickets. Really good effort. But these guys are getting on. So I think England will win the next Ashes over there. But to do so, they're going to have to change their game plan. Now, in the press conference, Ben Stokes said today that he said, we've got to go back to the drawing board. He used those terms. He said, and you've said this, Steve, in your column, that England were great with Bazball for 2.5 years. Then they played India and Australia, and it all sort of went awry. So he said, yeah, we got to recalibrate. And they do.
Crash, one of the questions asked of Steve Smith was whether he's going to be playing in that 2027 Ashes, and he was a bit coy about it. Has he finally fallen out of love with cricket?
Oh, no, look, John, he's a cricket nuffy, but he does live in New York now. He knows he hasn't got far to go, but he also knows this. There's just 2 uncharted peaks in his career, India in India and England in England, and I think he'll have one last dash at both of them. Now, he's not quite what he was, I have to say that, but he's still pretty good. And you're going to get a century a series out of him in a team with so many new batting faces, which that one will have. So I think Andrew McDonald will say to him soon, let's do Mission India and England, okay? I know, he probably doesn't want to go back to South Africa with memories of Sandpaper Gate and all that, but they will do anything to get him on those last 2 tours, John. I'll make this statement. If he doesn't go, they can't win either of them.
That's a big call. I mean, Crash, as somebody who was part of an opened up bus parade, where does this fit in? How does Australia celebrate this? Because like we said before, we're in England. It's 4-1. We know what England's mistakes were. But how do Australia celebrate winning the Ashes? Because there was a lot of talk about it being a close series. In the end, it hasn't been. But where do Australia sit with a celebration, and how do they look and reflect over there about how these last 7 weeks have gone?
I watched the players out in the field, Harmy, and it was interesting. This is just an hour ago. There was a sense of satisfaction and quiet contentment amongst them, but the reaction amongst the people in the street, and I just got a taxi driver back, and we were talking about it. It wasn't regarded as a great series. You made a statement I thought was very good, where you said you were hoping this series would put franchise cricket in its place, and we could pound the pulpit and say, this is why we need Test cricket, because it's electrified the whole scene. Well, it never quite got there. And I think we've got to concede that. It was a bit of a damp squib. There was barely any really, there was great moments, but not many great days, not many days when you floated out of the press box. So, once again, Harmy, and we said it 4 weeks ago, and 5 weeks ago, and I'll say it again. In my lifetime, there's never been a competitive Ashes series in Australia. England won 2, Australia won the rest. Lopsided. God, it's disappointing.
On the subject of disappointment, if you could put your finger on one aspect only about England's performance over the last 7 weeks, where would you set your gaze, or on what area?
Well, 3 quick ones. One, best quote came from Michael Vaughan. Baseball doesn't like the 1%ers. They're boring. But, practice, playing trial games, warm-up games against states, that's part of winning Ashes tours. Boredom. You need to be bored occasionally to win. Secondly, you cannot come here without adequate support coaches. Paul Collingwood vanished from public view mysteriously and apparently won't be back. But you need a fielding coach. You need blokes who play T20 cricket and aren't used to fielding in the slips. Get used to fielding in the slips. You get your lengths right, how far you stand back. And the third one, and the big one, John, I made many predictions on this series that haven't come true, but the one that did, and on this podcast we said, Mark Wood hadn't played since February 26th, the 26th of February. You can't come to Australia and play 3 or 4 tests with no cricket for, 7 months, 8 months? It's tour after tour. We see teams try it, and I promise you, it never works, ever. And Jofra was so underdone. Very good, but underdone.
Crash, just finally from me, and a quick one. All seen, all done, 7 weeks, 7.5 weeks, 4-1. Do you think England came and thought there's nothing better to do than just turn up? Do you think England came too complacent?
No, I don't think they thought they were automatically going to win, but I just felt the McCullum mantra. And, I saw Brendan McCullum play for the Brisbane Heat. And Harmy, it was a really jaunty period. He opened the batting with Chris Lynn, and they'd score 70 or 45. They didn't win anything. You know what I mean? And I saw him captain New Zealand, and I like the guy, but he changed the field every 3 overs, and it was all, they weren't really held accountable. I just felt that they were floating, not complacent, Harmy, but just floating in this happy-go-lucky world. And I'm sorry, Australia are tough in Australia. This is not a great Australian team. They were beatable. They really were. But that you weren't hard enough conditions. Your match plans weren't tight enough. Australia came up with a couple of clever plays, such as putting Alex Carey over the stumps. Really good move. And they were outfoxed. But if there's one bonus for England, it's this. They go home now knowing what it's like to play in second gear and third gear instead of just fourth all the time, So, but I can't wait for the next Ashes series. And if I get there, I'm coming to Ashington, your hometown. I'm going to your pub, and this is a goal of mine. And I'm going to say to the publican, can you find Steve Harmison for me? I'm throwing 200 quid on the bar, and I'm doing a feature on Steve, and I want everyone to tell me a Steve Harmison story. I can't wait. Seriously.
To be fair, Crash, if you go in my bar and you ask my publican where I am, I think you'll point in the corner rather than ring somebody up and say, "Can you find where he is?"
I just love that thought.